Welcome to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and today is the third episode with our wonderful guest who is talking about the pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. I really hope you enjoy the episode. I can't wait to find out what's in store. Welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. And for the third and final time, for now anyway, I'm delighted to welcome back Lesley Thomas from the Money Confidence Academy. Welcome back. It's great to have you again.
Thank you, Paula. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Super. Well, gosh, Lesley, we have learned so much about you over the last two episodes. We've learned all about your leadership journey and the twists and turns that took to get you to where you are today. And last week we were talking about your take on game of leadership and your personal game of leadership, your chessboard, and being your own knight in shining armor and all sorts of other things. So this week we are talking about the pivotal moments that led you to where you are, you know, the sorts of moments where things really change for us and then we realize that they have really shaped who we are moving forwards. You know, when we started whatever it was that we're going into on a particular challenge, we go in as one person. We come out the other side having learnt so much and other sort of strengths and things showing up for us that we're just not the same. So how has that happened for you over the years in your leadership journey?
Oh, there's been, a number of them. I mentioned in the first episode that, I started off my life, in corporate, and I had absolutely, no ambitions to run my own business at all. As far as I was concerned, I was going to climb the corporate ladder. I was going to retire, have my pension, and that was going to be that basically. And that's because that's how I was brought up. And it was only when an opportunity presented itself, we bought a property in Switzerland back in 2005. And the developer said to my husband, if you know anybody else who wants to buy a property and they go on to buy a property, we'll pay you a commission. And my husband kind of took that literally and set up, a website and started selling ski property in Switzerland. Eventually, just after his 40th birthday, he left, he was a director of a food company. He left to set up, on his own properly without the fallback plan, of his own salary. Fortunately, I had, a really good six-figure salary. So, I was able to kind of be the financial steadying the ship whilst he grew his business. What I didn't realize at the time was that was getting us into a position of me being able to choose. Do I want to continue to work in corporate or do I want to leave and join my husband? Having the conversation with my dad about what I was thinking of doing, my dad thought I was absolutely bonkers. Why would I want to leave? I had a final pension salary or final salary pension.
Yeah.
And that didn't enter into my head. I was circa 40, and the last thing I was thinking about was retiring in 25 years' time. So joined my husband at the point we thought we were coming out of the global recession. The global recession 2008. This was around about 2010 when I left. We thought we were coming out, but actually we kind of teetered, along, kind of bouncing along the bottom, of that recession. It wasn't that hockey shape that we were promised it was going to be. So, we had to make some, really big decisions financially in order for me to stay in the business. But I always had the belief that if it doesn't work out, I can go back into corporate life. Not realizing the longer you're at the corporate life, the less employable you are. Not necessarily because of your CV, but actually, you become unemployable because you don't want to have a boss, basically. Then there was rumours of a Brexit referendum, selling property in France and Switzerland, because I'd opened the French arm of the business. Rumours started, stupid rumours, and this goes to show how the media does not help at all.
No.
If we leave the EU, would UK people be able to travel to France? What? How ridiculous is that? Because Americans never come to Europe at all, ever. It's only people in Europe who travel in Europe. So people stopped looking at buying property, etc. So again, we had those wobbles of, oh my goodness, our livelihood, is going to start disappearing. So again, we had to look at, what we were doing, with our lives, lifestyle, etc. Then the Brexit referendum happened, and the same thing happened over again. People fearful what it meant for them. Then the pandemic happened, and obviously people were not able to travel. So for us, that was the biggest threat, to our business. If people can't travel, how can they go and view property and therefore buy a second home in France and Switzerland? Well, actually, people pivoted. They decided they would buy property simply by viewing it virtually. So actually, the pandemic helped things as far as our property business was concerned, because it shortened the sales cycle, basically. But during all of this, big decisions were needing, to be made in terms of our lives, our livelihood, our children going into private education. Do we keep them in private school? Do we take them out of private school? But I think, and this is where kind of the abundant mindset comes into this, and this has demonstrated itself to me so many times, over the last kind of 2.5 years, actually taking personal responsibility for knowing the options of what is going on, not sitting and waiting for disaster to happen, but planning as best you can. What can we do less of in terms of cutting down costs? What can we do more of in terms of raising our visibility, etc., etc.? And this is where moving into the coaching world has helped our other business as well, because I've been encouraging my husband to get a lot more visible. Didn't know it was a thing, before I came into the coaching world. Didn't know I needed to be visible. We kind of sat behind the beautiful properties that we sell. But actually, having gone through the global crash of 2008, having gone through the Brexit referendum, having gone through the pandemic, and actually realizing that if you believe you are doing the right thing and you look to do it differently, you look to understand what is going on from what do your clients need, what's going on for them, what's going to help them, then slowly but surely you start to see the opportunities, and more importantly, the opportunities start to see you. And I think for me, there's been some rock bottom moments in terms of, with my coaching business, things not working out the way I wanted to, in the beginning, having to face up to my own comparisonitis, a word you mentioned in the last episode, comparing myself unfavorably to others, suffering from imposter syndrome, but actually recognizing the importance of having to go through all of that to get to the stage that I am at now. But I think one of the most important things I've learned is I have always been, and I didn't know this till probably the last 12 months or so, I've always been very much a lone wolf. So whilst I have very, very good friends back in Wales, very, very good friends in Salisbury, I will kind of go around the back of them and go on to the next and come back around again and go back. And that's part of protectionism to a certain extent. And believing that I had to be able to manage it all. I had to be able to circumvent all the circumstances. I had to have this massively successful coaching business, within 12 months of starting the business, because if I didn't, I was a failure. And actually, no, I had a bit of a mental breakdown, is far too much of an exaggeration, a bit of an emotional breakdown with my husband in October of last year, where I literally just started crying. And he hadn't noticed I was crying. Like, excuse me, I'm crying over here. Why are you not noticing? And it was because I am such a robust person. He's not used to me asking for help, even needing help. But because I put so much pressure on myself to be this £5 million business in 12 months' time, because other people had £5 million businesses, and why was I not having the £1 million launches, etc., etc. Once I sat down and Lesley, why are you putting this pressure on yourself? This business is meant to be something that you're going to grow over time. It's going to be the thing that when the boys have gone off to university, we're going to go off traveling, and you're going to be doing the public speaking that you want to do, whilst I'm on the sun lounger, by the pool. You're doing this fantastic speech, etc. I thought, why have I put this pressure on myself to be this overnight success that I know in reality doesn't exist? And I think I kind of bought in to everything and became my own worst enemy. And at the point that I realized I can grow this business the way that I want to grow it, I can see what happens and where it takes me without feeling that constant pressure. I still spend some of my time working in my husband's business. And that's partly because I discovered I was missing working with him. So rather than resisting it, I actually went, no, I enjoy. So we'll go out for lunch and we'll talk business strategy around his business, our business, because it's something that we have very much grown together. So I think we have gone through, as everybody has gone through, the different pivotal moments that globally has impacted people. Those same moments have impacted us. It's how we have responded to them. And I genuinely feel that where I am now, I am meant to be. I genuinely believe there is more to come, but it'll only come if I take the action needed to get there. And, obviously, yet again, globally, we are going through, a massive financial upheaval. But already, they're talking about in 12 months' time, in 24 months' time, we'll be through this. And I kind of feel it's incumbent on me now to be not only setting things up for me and my family, not sitting back and going, oh my God, everybody's going to disappear. There's going to be no clients whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, people are buying. At the end of the day, people are living. I've come back from Florida. The plane out was full. The plane back was full. In fact, both planes were overfilled. They were paying people not to get onto the plane, basically. They'd overbooked it again. We know people are buying ski property. They might be buying slightly less expensive ski property than they planned to buy originally. But I think when you actually approach things from the perspective of, I have to find a way to make it work, I have to find a way to get through this, that I think we will find a way to get through this, because I'm a real believer in, and this too will pass. Because when you think, what our grandparents went through, the war, ration books, etc., etc. I do think that if we have a sense of purpose, and I know again this is something obviously you're an expert in, but if we have a sense of purpose, if we have a belief that we have a purpose as well, and if we believe that our abilities match our ability to deliver on that purpose, then you develop a bunker mentality. And that is something that I try hard now to have. I have an awareness of what is going on. I have an awareness, in the coaching industry, of practices that might not be right, of people who are, who are not necessarily saying it like it is, etc. But I don't allow that to affect me or my judgment. I have my blinkers on and I get on with doing what I am doing. So for me, my pivotal moments are, very much deciding to leave corporate without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Deciding to set up the French arm, of, our business, something I had no experience of doing it anyway, and believing I could do it. Going into the coaching business, setting up the Money Confidence Academy, and riding every one of those waves that would come to try and, take me back out to sea, but actually do everything I possibly could to clamber, my way back to shore. So I think for me, it has been about recognizing I don't need to shoulder it all, recognizing the importance of talking, recognizing the importance of asking for help, and realizing that I don't have to do this alone, even though, as you'll know, being an entrepreneur can be a lonely place, but it's only a lonely place actually if you accept the loneliness, because there's so many people out there. And I think developing the network that I have over the last 2.5 years, that has been massively, massively important. And I don't know if I would have developed as a robust and as wide a network as I have if the pandemic hadn't happened. So I think the pandemic has put me in a stronger position in a strange way. Not that I would ever, ever, ever have wanted it to happen, but I think it is a case of trying to really look at what you want and how you can go about achieving it. Being very, very realistic, but in that realism, don't accept limitations, because very often our realism is very badly tainted by our limiting beliefs about what is possible for us. And my clients know, and a big thing I always talk about is the art of the possible. And if you go and look for the evidence of what is possible, then actually it's very, very difficult to deny the only thing that is stopping you from having what you want is your belief in it being possible for you. And yes, I am never, ever going to be, approached by NASA to be an astronaut, on the next space journey, but I wouldn't want to be either.
Yes.
I certainly wouldn't want to be either. But I do know that anything that I truly, truly set my mind to, if I get out of my own way, I will do achieve it. And for me, it is about recognizing when I am getting in my own way, and I still get in my own way. I still have that battle, between my conscious self and my subconscious self. But I try to see it now, again, going back to the topic of the game. I do try to see it as a bit of a game, and I try to enjoy that game, as much as I possibly can.
And this is why coaches still need coaches, because whilst we're really great at being coaches for other people, it's so hard to coach yourself.
Yeah.
We can do it to a certain extent, but sometimes you've got to understand that you do need to accept that you need some help and support, and surrounding yourself with that great support, people that are going to lift you up, people that are going to encourage you, people that are going to hold you to account as you say, look at this over here, this is the thing that I want to achieve, it's massive, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but will you help me? How powerful is that?
Massive.
For you as a person to put yourself out there, be vulnerable and admit that, but also for the people that you're putting your trust in to say, I want you holding my hand as I go for this thing over here that I previously thought was impossible. So you're absolutely right. You talked in the previous episode about making your own decisions, and I talked about choice. People have choices. People are able to make their own decisions. It's that almost that paralysis to make a decision that we need to help remove, for ourselves, because then you start to believe. And you and I have chuckled about this before. I stood in my own way for 18 months before I got this podcast out the bag, and now I'm doing it. I'm like, what on earth was I thinking?
Exactly.
It's one of my favorite things to do.
And that's exactly it. Now, I had almost the opposite experience with the podcast. It was my subconscious was trying to stop me, and my conscious was like, you're going to do it anyway, ignore her, just keep going. And it was like me being pulled almost in two directions. But again, I do wish I'd started it earlier, absolutely. But I did definitely almost have that game mentality where my conscious self won over my subconscious self. But partly that's because I employed somebody to produce the podcast for me. So there were certain things I had to do, in order to fulfill the contract. I had to make decisions. I had to create content. And maybe if I hadn't have employed somebody else, and therefore no accountability, no responsibility, I might not have got my podcast out 12 months ago. And I think, you're right that actually asking for help, recognizing you want to do something, but you haven't got the full skill set to do it, or other things need to happen, and then you go, sod it, I'm going to give it a go anyway. It's continuing to have that conversation with yourself, not blocking it out and not taking a limiting decision forever. Because very often we can say, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm absolutely not going to do that. Maybe I will do it. Because we're having that continual conversation with ourselves. And I think once we realize the difference between a limiting belief and a limiting decision, and think about that very thing I'm saying I'm not doing, I'm not going to do, what is the impact of not doing it? Is that going to stop me from hitting a particular goal? Is that going to prevent me from being able to do a certain thing? If someone's measure of success, somebody else's goals, they're not your measure of success. If they're not your goals, be blinkered to it. Just go by what's important to you. Because when you do that, when you make that real emotional connection between what you want, then you will take the action required, the decision that needs to be made in order to do it. And I think that is, for me, it was a really pivotal realization, is the way that I put it. Real pivotal realization. Yeah.
I love that, Lesley. That internal dialogue that we have with ourselves, is so important. I call it your inner guru and your inner critic. We so often sabotage ourselves. We are our own limiters.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that internal dialogue that you talked about between that limiting belief or that limiting decision, it is the limiting decision that will trip you up. And we have that power within ourselves, even though some of us don't believe we do. We don't believe we're confident enough. We don't believe we're enough of X, Y, and Z, whatever it might be, to achieve what it is over here that we really want to achieve. And, that's what you and I are great as coaches in helping people to do, is unlock those limiting decisions and beliefs and help them to get past that and realize they've got choices, realize if they get the right support around them, whatever is possible for them that they want to make happen.
Yeah, and be excited about it. I think once you
Absolutely.
get excited that actually you can make different decisions. It's not, it's not a decision necessarily it's going to be able to change things overnight, but it
No.
can be a little bit like, a big juggernaut that slowly has to, start making a maneuver to change course. That can be what you have to do with regards to a decision. Take a decision, take the first step, and just continue to take what may just be little steps to begin with, but eventually the whole course of that juggernaut has changed. Just believe it's possible for you, because I genuinely think that is the difference between success as you define it, because I think that's really, really important.
Oh, yes,
Success as
definitely.
you define it, and not achieving that success is actually deciding what you want and believing it is possible for you. And I think once you can get those two things balanced out, you can get excited, you can get that emotional connection. And once you're emotionally connected to your goal, the things that you were scared about doing actually don't seem quite so scary anymore.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, Lesley. Thank you so much. Again, what a fascinating conversation. It's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you today and the last 2 episodes. Thank you so much for, as always, bringing your all. It's just been really special to spend this time with you, and I truly thank you.
No, thank you very much. I've loved all 3 of our conversations. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, and I hope this won't be the last time. We'll think of another way to reinvent Game of Leadership, because obviously we've got this sort of three episode format that we're going through in our first season, if we call it that, or whatever way you want to look at it. And there'll be ways to bring you back in at some point in the future, and I look forward to that very much.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Take care.
You too. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. This has been the 3rd episode and final episode for a little while anyway, with our guest, who shared their pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. Again, I talk about uniqueness a lot. Every guest story and their pivotal moments, the challenges they faced, the issues they faced over the years to get to where they are now, and how they pulled themselves through all of that, makes them the leader they are today. And each one of those stories is unique and different. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with them and see what that meant for them. Now, once again, it's your turn to reflect on what you've heard today. See what resonates for you and think about what that might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I look forward to welcoming you back next time on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Bye for now.